What if everything you've been doing to show your dog you love them has actually been pushing them away? Not because you're a bad owner, not because you don't care, but because somewhere along the way you learned the wrong language. And your dog has been quietly trying to bridge that gap every single day without you even knowing there was one. That's what this video is about. Not training tips, not commands, something deeper. The invisible distance that grows between dogs and the people who love them most, built one small misunderstanding at a time. Here's the truth most people never want to hear. The bond you think you have with your dog and the bond your dog actually experiences may be two completely different things. We tell ourselves that love is enough, and love matters deeply. But love without understanding is just noise to a dog's nervous system. It doesn't reach them. It doesn't translate. And the gap between what you think you're communicating and what your dog is actually receiving, that gap, over months and years, quietly erodes trust at a neurological level. You didn't build that gap on purpose. Nobody does. You built it the same way most people do, by following advice that was never right to begin with. Think about the last time your dog looked at you in a way you couldn't quite read. Or the last time you corrected them and they flinched in a way that felt off. Or the last time they just stopped bringing you toys. Stopped initiating play. Stopped doing that thing they used to do that made you feel chosen. Maybe you told yourself they were getting older. Maybe you thought it was a phase. But what if it wasn't? What if it was a slow, quiet response to years of small moments? Moments where your dog needed something from you, and the message never got through. A bond isn't destroyed in dramatic moments. It's destroyed in the small, daily ones we never think to question. We're going to go through 8 of the biggest myths doing damage to your relationship with your dog right now, and I need you to stay for myth number 5, because that's the one that changes people. It's not rare. It's not extreme. It's something happening in quiet living rooms every single evening between dogs and owners who love each other deeply and are still slowly growing apart because of it. If your dog has ever looked at you in a way you couldn't explain, stay with me through all 8 of these, because by the end, you won't just understand your dog better. You'll understand why they've never stopped choosing you, even when you didn't speak their language. Have you ever been told you need to be the alpha? That your dog has to know who's boss, or they'll walk all over you? That advice came from a single, deeply flawed study conducted in the 1970s. On captive wolves in an artificial enclosure. The researcher himself, David Meck, spent decades publicly trying to retract it. And here's the critical part most people miss. Your dog is not a wolf. Dogs evolved specifically to live alongside humans. They're not running a power hierarchy in your home. They're reading your emotional state, your consistency, and your safety, and responding to all 3. Dominance training doesn't build respect. It builds a dog that complies out of fear, and fear closes the very neural pathways that make bonding possible. The owner who won every confrontation, who corrected harshly, who always had the last word, and then one day realized their dog had stopped bringing them toys, stopped making eye contact, stopped initiating anything. They thought they had a calm, obedient dog. What they had was a dog that had quietly given up on being understood. Respect from a dog is never taken. It's grown in the soil of safety, patience, and 1,000 small moments of being heard. But dominance is at least something we can see. What about the myths hiding inside the things we actually believe are making our dogs feel good? For decades, owners were warned, never let your dog win tug of war. It will make them dominant, challenging, out of control. Modern behavioral science calls this what it is, mythology. Studies consistently show that dogs allowed to win at tug are actually more obedient, more confident, and more bonded to their owners. Not less, because letting a dog win is an act of generosity, and dogs read generosity as safety. Safety deepens trust. Trust builds the bond. Every time you yanked that rope back and won, you interrupted a game your dog was using to connect with you. Play is the language of bonding, and you were speaking it with an accent that said, "This isn't really for you." Think about a child who only ever loses games with their parent. They don't feel safe. They don't feel seen. Eventually, they stop asking to play. Dogs aren't so different. If we've been misreading play this badly, imagine how badly we've been misreading something even more fundamental, the way dogs actually learn. Sit, sit, sit. I said sit. Every dog owner has done it. And every time they are unknowingly teaching their dog that the first sit means absolutely nothing, that commands are background noise until the volume or frustration rises. Behavioral neuroscience calls this stimulus degradation. The more you repeat a cue without consequence, the less neurological weight that cue carries. You're not reinforcing the command, you're erasing it. The dog isn't defying you. They've learned through repetition that the word has no real meaning until something shifts. That dog sniffing the ground while you repeat yourself for the fourth time isn't being stubborn. They're living inside a broken communication system, trying to decode a language that keeps changing its rules. Repeating a command your dog isn't responding to is like sending the same email 10 times to someone whose inbox is full. The problem was never the message, it was the channel. And if commands can lose meaning through repetition, what happens to something far more important? What happens to eye contact? Here's something that will reframe everything. In dog language, prolonged direct eye contact is a threat signal, a dominance challenge, a precursor to confrontation. When we stare at our dogs the way we stare at people we love, we are sending a signal their nervous system reads as pressure, not intimacy. Yes, research confirms that mutual gaze releases oxytocin in both dogs and owners, but there is a profound difference between soft, invited, mutual eye contact and sustained human staring. One is connection. The other is confrontation dressed in good intentions. The owner who stared lovingly at their dog and couldn't understand why the dog always looked away first. They felt rejected, but their dog was actually being polite. That look away was a calming signal, a way of saying, "I'm not challenging you. Please don't challenge me." Your dog has been protecting the relationship, even in the moments you thought they were pulling away from it. Which brings us to point 5, the one I mentioned at the start. For years, the advice was ironclad. Don't comfort a frightened dog. You'll make it worse. You'll reward the fear. This advice has been thoroughly dismantled by modern behavioral science. You cannot reinforce an emotional state the way you reinforce a behavior. Fear is not a trick. It's a physiological response. And comfort doesn't teach a dog to be more afraid. It teaches them that you are a safe place to return to when the world feels dangerous. Think about the owner who held themselves back, who watched their dog trembling during a thunderstorm, every muscle telling them to reach out, and didn't because someone told them it would make things worse. Their dog sat alone in their fear, and in that moment, the most important thing a bond can offer, "I am here, you are safe," was withheld. Secure attachment theory, the same science that applies to human relationships, shows that consistent comfort during distress builds confidence over time. Not dependency, confidence. Every time you comforted your dog and were told you were wrong, you were right. Your instinct to reach for them was the most honest thing you did that day. But we'd been withholding something else too, something your dog needs that most owners don't even know exists. We celebrate the easy dog, the one that lies still, doesn't chew furniture, doesn't bark, doesn't ask for anything. But behavioral science has a name for some of these dogs: shutdown. A dog that has stopped expressing needs isn't a content dog. It may be a dog that has learned that expressing needs leads nowhere, learned helplessness. A nervous system that has dimmed its own signals because they were never answered. The absence of problems is not the presence of well-being. The dog that never bothers you might be the dog that needs you most. Their silence isn't serenity. It might be surrender. Compare it to a child who stops crying in class, not because they're okay, but because they've learned no one comes. The stillness looks like peace, it isn't. And if silence can hide pain, imagine what else we've been misreading, including one of the most common things dogs do with their bodies every single day. A wagging tail is not a happiness signal, it is a communication signal, and its meaning depends entirely on position, speed, direction, and body context. Research by neuroscientist Giorgio Viadordicura found that a tail wagging bias to the right side of the body indicates positive emotional states, biased to the left, negative ones. A high, stiff, fast wag can signal arousal, overstimulation, or even aggression. Dogs have been communicating all of this with extraordinary nuance, and we've been reading only the movement, calling it joy. Every dog bite that came out of nowhere, every child nipped after approaching a happy, wagging dog. The dog was never silent. It was speaking in a language no one in the room had been taught to hear. A wagging tail is not a green light, it's a sentence. And for years, we've been reading only the period. Dogs sleep 12 to 14 hours a day, not out of laziness, but because sleep is when the canine brain consolidates learning, regulates emotion, and repairs the nervous system. Chronic sleep disruption in dogs is directly linked to increased anxiety, reactivity, and aggression. But here's what matters most. The quality of a dog's sleep is a direct reflection of how safe they feel in their environment. A dog that sleeps deeply, fully relaxed, breathing slowly, twitching through a dream, is a dog that trusts the world around them. The greatest gift you can give your dog is not a walk, a toy, or a treat. It's a life so consistently safe that they can close their eyes in the middle of it and not be afraid of what they'll wake up to. And that is what all 8 of these myths have really been about. Not information, trust. Pull back for a moment. Wider than training tips and behavior charts, your dog has been a perfect student of you, learning your patterns, your moods, your silences, your signals since the day they arrived. They have been doing their best to understand a creature that doesn't speak their language, doesn't read their signals, and doesn't always know how to meet them where they are, and they stayed anyway. That loyalty, that stubborn, unearned, unconditional staying, is the most extraordinary thing any living creature can offer another. You didn't earn it with perfect training. You earned it just by being there. Imagine what becomes possible when you start to really show up. If this changed something in you, share it with someone who loves a dog. And if you want to go deeper into how your dog actually thinks and feels, the next video is already waiting. So is your dog.